We wanted to share the story behind the song Clear the Way. So I am inviting my friends, Emily Weeks and Amanda Blankenship, who wrote this song with me, to just share a little bit about how the song came to be. There's really not an easier way to say this. We wrote the song in a castle in Scotland on a life-changing trip. That's
Exactly.
that's the short story. We thought we might give you a little more behind the scenes information. We had this chance to go on the Scotland trip together, and it was kind of at an inconvenient time in my life to go on an international trip. Uh, but I just knew that I was supposed to be there. And did everything in my power to try to get like a yes to go on this trip and couldn't. Our pastor at the time was preaching a sermon about the Lord's Prayer. And he said, in paraphrase, that, asking God to give us our daily bread and to keep us, from evil was sort of like asking God to clear the way for us to be able to accomplish all of our kingdom purposes. And when he said clear the way, it like lit up in my soul. I was like, clear the way. That is going to be my prayer. I'm going to pray that God would clear the way for me to go on the trip. And so I think maybe the next day I was outside just thinking about that thought and pushing my daughter in the swing outside. And I have the work tape of me just trying to like make this a melody, just starting to sing Clear the Way. And I kept singing it and singing it. And then it was just basically a prayer. I was praying and singing. But fast forward to several things lined up, and it was very clear that I was going to be able to go on the trip through a bunch of really cool circumstances. And we were all getting ready to go, and all chaos broke loose for the whole team. It was just like very clear that it wasn't just coincidental, like there was some resistance to whatever this trip was. And so I remember we had all gathered together for just a time of prayer and commissioning for the send-off. And so, Amanda, you were probably in Ohio, I think, right? You weren't there
Yeah,
with
I was watching the live
watching
stream.
online. Yeah. But Emily, were you there that night?
Yes, I was there too.
And I remember we were just kind of like praying over all these weird circumstances, just, that everyone would be able to make it to the airport, get on the plane, and end up in Scotland. Just felt like God was like, sing clear the way over all of these problems and for this team. And my heart was like racing and I was pretty embarrassed, but that was kind of my out loud prayer, was like just to sing that over the team. And so that was really kind of it. And then we, a couple of days later, all somehow ended up on a plane that took off and landed in the beautiful land of Scotland. While we were on this life-changing tour of Scotland, where we learned all about revival history, we heard a story about this group of people called the Covenanters, and they were basically a group of people who signed a document that said they were going to stand for religious freedom in their country. And at the time, that was a really big deal because the country was trying to impose kind of a church that everyone had to believe the same thing. But the biggest fanatical idea they carried was that they wanted everyone to have access to read the scripture for themselves. Many of them were thrown into a prison or they were persecuted, and a lot of them were eventually martyred. And we walked over and we saw the prison, and it didn't even have a ceiling on it. It was just open air prison, and they just piled all of these Covenanters in there. And then not far from there, we saw just a grave where they were all buried. And it was sober. I just remember it was, I don't know if heavy is the right word, but it was just like sobering. That moment where you realize like, oh, wow, we don't realize how deep our freedom has cost someone else, The significance of the artwork, that is the gates that you see. That was actually the gates for the Covenanters prison. And I don't know if you guys remember the Arthur's Seat mountain.
Yes.
So it's kind of a mashup, a picture, but the gates of that artwork are the Covenanter prison gates. On the very last songwriting day of the trip,
The last session.
the last session, the very last session, the three of us were what'd you say?
I would say it was our third rite of the day.
It was our third rite
Mhm.
of the day. Oh my goodness.
I just remember being exhausted and
I
thinking,
do remember
we're not going to write anything right now.
exactly. I do remember
You
thinking,
guys feel that too?
yes.
I think it was I think it was our third optional rite for the day.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's right. I kind of forgot that. I just remember wanting to get to know you, Amanda, because I don't think we really knew each other before. We knew who each other were, but we never really like spent any time together. And so it was kind of interesting because the three of us just got to jump into a co-write together, which was really cool. And I just remember walking into the chapel and we were exhausted, but still like giddy that we were there.
Oh yeah. And there was that chapel had really beautiful acoustics.
Yes.
So it was really fun to sing in there.
Yes.
And so I think that kind of inspired us too, because it was just really fun to be in that place.
Yeah. And I think we also realized too immediately that we were all melody writers, and we were like,
Right.
oh, how's this gonna work? Like
we're
we're like, oh, it's pretty and we can sing in here. It's gonna be awesome. But we all just write melody.
Yeah, I forgot that part, but yeah, you're right. And I think like at the time we thought, oh no, we might not be able to get a song. Yeah, but it'll sound pretty, like you said. That's so funny. I forgot that. So I don't really remember if we even tossed around other ideas. I just remember somehow saying, I don't know, singing that idea. And I think, Amanda, I think I remember you going, oh, did you sing that at the commissioning? Like, I think you remembered hearing it online or something. And so I just sang the idea that I had, which is what the chorus is. I mean, it didn't really change. And then I just don't remember how we thought from there, let's go back to the Covenanters and write their story.
Yeah. Yeah, it just kind of flowed in the moment, I think.
It did. I mean, I do think that like if you look at the lyrics, you can see the Covenanters in there for sure. So they were definitely an inspiration to like, when the enemy surrounds us, we'll remember what you like the fact they wouldn't be, I think mostly how they wouldn't give way to fear, they wouldn't be shaken, and how like there was no holding them down. Because we saw like even though, people were killed obviously for it, it only furthered the spread of the gospel. So I don't know, you can see it throughout it for sure.
And I can remember when we got to the bridge part, we were kind of thinking through, we first kind of said like love will always win, and then we said that's not strong enough, and then we said truth will always win, and then we're all like yes, and it relates back to the Covenanters as well. So I think I remember that moment being excited about that we, that wasn't quite it. No, truth, because truth is just so important.
We had a pretty solid chorus idea of what that was, but then the actual verses, I remember they kind of came pretty, we had a good vision for what it was supposed to be. And I saw Amanda shared with us a picture, which I'll share and post, that was kind of some of our ideas like crossed out, and you can kind of see where we started and where we developed it too. But I just remember there was a moment where we had maybe had part of the lyric was backwards. It originally, I don't really.
That's on this page too. So I didn't share with you guys the other page, but this page is like the structuring where we kind of like the puzzle pieces. We were like,
yes.
Yeah. And I think that was a lot you, Lani, because I know like structure is part of.
Yes.
part of your like songwriting personality too, was like just moving things.
Which is so funny because at that point, that wasn't really like something I really knew yet. But it was, I remember when we made that shift and we put that verse down at the bottom about when the enemy surrounds us, it was the same kind of feeling that you said earlier, where it felt just stronger. Like you were saying about the truth will always win. Then that night, everyone got together in this really cool room up in the top of the castles, kind of like, I feel like it's, you know, you have to have a secret passcode to be able to get into it. And it was this really neat place called the Beacon Room. And we all shared our songs. I don't know. I just remember leading that and introducing it for the first time and just everyone catching it right away. And, you know, how neat that was. And I think when you write a song, you might have an idea if you think it's going to work or not, but you really never know.
I hadn't been in a season of playing guitar that much until this trip. And I liked to play the guitar. I played it in high school and stuff in college, but I remember thinking, oh yeah, there's no one here on this trip that can do this for me. Like we didn't have a ton of pianos on the trip, and there weren't very many guitar players. And so I really musically had to just step up my confidence and be like, oh yeah, I can do this. So I remember feeling a little nervous, like, am I going to play these chords right? And it was actually really good for me to just kind of step up and be like, all right, there's no one else here who's going to do this. I have to do it. But it was good. It was good. It kind of unlocked a season where now I play guitar all the time again. So I'm glad that I was kind of forced into that. But yeah, I remember sharing that from guitar. And that room was so, I don't know, it was just a sacred moment up there. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, same. Once we got back, we were able to put on a concert with everyone who had been part of the team and just share some of the songs that were written from that trip. And they asked us to do Clear the Way. It has so much depth, people will never even know, like at first glance, it's just a song, you know? But I think, and because it was such a heartfelt, deep prayer for breakthrough, I think somehow you can feel that in the spirit of the song. It carries that even if you don't know the story behind it. And so not only did we start to lead it like at conferences that we would do, just special events that we were invited to do and be a part of. And I just will never take for granted that feeling of just singing that first line and watching people catch it right away. And like there's almost like this excitement about it, because I don't know, I think it just carries a special thing of like, we're advancing, we're marching forward, and we want to be doing what God wants us to do. I feel like that kind of comes through in the words. But so 2 years later, you guys had the opportunity to go on yet another life-changing trip, and God did not clear the way for me to go on that trip. And so I got a huge surprise when I saw you guys actually took it to Ireland with you. And I was going to ask you to share about that.
So this was very memorable for me. It was a really neat experience because we wrote with some of the people in the congregation, and then the next day we led worship at the church. So I don't know how it was decided, but Chrissy asked us to lead Clear the Way. And I'll never forget it, because as soon as we started strumming that song and playing that song, the whole place just like it just energized, and they were singing it immedately, like right away. And I was thinking like, wow, this is really this is for Ireland too. Like I remember just thinking, we wrote this in Scotland, but I don't know, this is really resonating. But I had always had this heart for the nations to be glad and sing for joy. And I would always pray, Lord, like, I would love to see that. I'd love to be a part of that. And so to show up at this church and spend time writing with the people there, and then to lead that song the next day with Amanda, and then to just see the nations being glad and singing for joy, it really, it was a very significant moment for me. It was one of those moments that you feel so humbled by God's kindness in it, that I almost felt like I needed to go have some alone time and just thank him and like praise him for his faithfulness in my life. But I couldn't do that then. I had to do that later because we were still leading the song. But it was really neat to see that take off there. So yeah.
And that was crazy for me because I had no idea you guys would have a chance to do that, or it just never would have crossed my mind. But it was so cool for me to see that, because it was like, for me, God was going, I could take the song even when you can't go. And it was huge for me because I wanted to be there and be part of that trip so bad too. But I had prayed, that God would send this song. I still pray to the north, east, south, and west. And so when you guys did that, and we have a video of it, I still have a video of it, just, you can visibly see it. It's like they just broke out singing that song, and it was like they knew it and they didn't, it was like, it was so cool.
They knew it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was a lady that stood up and like prophesied or was sharing a prophecy that they had about Clear the Way. And like she connected with it when we started singing, and then she shared what that was for their church. And that was wild too. I don't remember quite the details of it. I don't know if one of you do, but I was just like, it's one of the moments you're standing there and you're like, what's happening?
Right. It was so cool. I heard the video and had typed it all out because I was just floored. Like, and we see that all the time, like, where God's telling the same message to different people, but it was so cool. And I don't know if I told you guys this, but so when you guys got back from the Ireland trip, and then we all got together and you guys shared all the songs you wrote from that trip, Jenny McGrew, who is from Canada, which was cool to me because I was like, hey, that's another nation. And she was saying, oh, I really love that song. I heard that you wrote it with them. And she shared this verse from Isaiah, and she said, is this what you wrote the song from? And it's Isaiah 62:10. It says, go through the gates, clear the way for the people, build up the highway, remove the stones, lift up a banner over the peoples. And I was like, no, that's not, we did not.
It just got chills.
It was, I could not believe it. Like, what? No, we didn't know that verse existed. And I just, yeah, it was just so neat. Anyway,
cool.
Yeah. And so then I remember, Emily, I've seen you lead this song in Ireland. I saw you lead it. Were you at the Ryman leading it?
Yes, that's right. Because God cleared the way for Brave Worship to lead at the Ryman Auditorium.
And then I know for so many of us, for me personally, for a lot of people that have heard the song like through the conferences or through church, have said to me, this is my song. I pray this over situations where I'm just really needing breakthrough. And I know like that's been a lot of people's story.
Mm-hmm. Didn't you say Amanda done that?
Yeah, I really felt like obviously it's like the song has grown in time, and I don't know how to maybe explain that well, but I feel like it's actually strengthened through the years that that we've journeyed with it. And for me, I see it like when I heard you guys were putting it out, I was so excited, and I felt like, wow, it's like time. It's like time for it to be released in a bigger way, because I really feel like this song is a weapon. And like in my own life, like I've used it, or like those prayer times with that song, I know I'm actually using a weapon against whatever needs to be cleared, whatever obstacle, whatever thing it is. And I'm just like pumped to realize that it's going to be out there in a bigger way for people around the world to use. Like, I was just trying to imagine like what things it's going to like just demolish. and breakthrough in people's lives. So it's definitely done that in my life and other people's lives that, I've used that song to pray over them with. So I know it's going to do that in a bigger way.
I think that's kind of the message of the song. It's not easy. It's not easy to clear the way. It's really hard work, and it is a weapon, and it is, hard to break through. But there's something about, I don't know, just the spirit of the song. I think that just helps there be joy and mixed in with it too. I'm super excited just to continue to share it. I'm so glad it finally exists, and that more people can hear it and share it. And I am just praying that God continues to use the song in more ways than we can, and that He would just continue to clear the way for anything that we're needing breakthrough in our own lives, and that just like the original meaning was just so that we can accomplish our kingdom purposes. So I also think maybe we should write a song together again sometime.
Yes,
Worked out pretty good for that one. And I just want to say thank you, girls, so much for just being friends and for writing the song. And I'm excited to see how God continues to use it.
Yes. Let's do.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys.